Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. If you have seen my first impressions on Delta Force Hawk Ops Alpha playtest, which will pop up on the top right corner, you already know how I feel about the game. But for you guys who don't know, in my opinion, Delta Force has no chance trying to compete against any Battlefield game. Not only that, but this game has some major issues, and I mean it when I say it, some major issues that will make it hard for this game to even survive a couple of months after the release. Apart from major issues, there are of course some minors as well, which you can call some quality of life problems that do also make the experience awful, to say the least. So we are going over all that, but before we start, if you enjoy the content and want to see more videos on Delta Force Hawk Ops and of course Battlefield, this is the place for you. So subscribe to the channel because it only takes one click and you won't be missing out on the future videos. So starting off with cheaters, like it or not, Delta Force is currently dealing with this, even though this is just a closed alpha test. The comment section of my first impressions video is just filled with people who stopped playing because of hackers abusing the lobbies, and this is not a fresh out of the oven topic. Even most of the AAA titles are facing this, and most of them can't really do much about it. But you know, there's always a risk factor when people decide to go down the cheating route. In other words, having a free-to-play title and trying to protect it from cheaters as developers is a whole different thing. People pay to play a Battlefield game, for instance, and you still have cheaters. Imagine if there's a shooting game claiming it will be a Battlefield competitor and it's free to play. Well, simply said, it's just a paradise for cheaters. And that's just true. We see that happening right now in Delta Force, and developers have said before the alpha that they do know the concerns of the community regarding the cheating issues, and they will work on that to ensure a fair play for players. Well, that didn't go so well, and this is just the beginning for this game. When everyone can have access in, let's say, an open beta, things will even get worse. And honestly, at this point, and with the current situation of shooting games and cheat selling companies, there is not much they can do, and I'm not really here to give them any advice here, since I'm just a Battlefield content creator and not a smart security specialist. But this is, in my opinion, the community's #1 concern right now. So the sooner they can fix it, the sooner they find a solution for it, at least not a permanent solution because they really can't have a permanent one, but if they can find a solution for at least the closed alpha test, things will get way better. So that's something they really should work on right now and for the future of the title. The next thing that is completely messed up, and I just encourage you all to prove me wrong if you think that I'm actually wrong, is map design. Having a lot of open terrain with little to no cover is the issue that Battlefield 2042's base maps have always suffered from. But you know, at least DICE had an excuse for this. DICE tried to sell 2042 as a Battlefield game which could bring 128 player game modes, and for containing such a big player count in a map, the only way for them was to make bigger maps, so the game will feel like a Battlefield game anyways. With Delta Force, we only have 64 players, but the map design instantly reminds you of 2042's base maps with open terrain, having no cover, and you being shot at from almost every direction, desperate to find something to take cover behind with no avail. And I'm specifically talking about the map Ascension. Unlike the cheating issue, I do know what they've done wrong with the map design with perfect accuracy, because I've been playing these kind of maps in 2042 for the past 2 years. The simple answer is, they tried to copy what 2042 did. Not a very good idea if you ask me. Instead, with 64 players max, developers need to focus on how to make maps richer instead of how to make them bigger. Because like it or not, in a game mode similar to Breakthrough, you don't even need a map to be super big. You only use a small part of it. I have no idea if there is going to be a Conquest-ish game mode in future, but right now, Ascension is just the recipe for disaster, and they should learn from this mistake early on. Otherwise, Delta Force Hawk Ops will end up just like 2042, making DICE developers literally rework every single map to make them slightly playable. And I'm pretty sure that's not something that Delta Force developers want to do. That's just a rabbit hole that no rational developer wants to go down. The next big issue here is the vehicle design, which is just ridiculous, believe it or not. Some say they are overpowered and some say they are not so powerful and useless. Whatever take you have on this, the obvious fact here is that vehicles in Delta Force don't have the impact you expect on the field, unlike Battlefield games, where infantry is completely tied to vehicles and usually a team with better air and ground support from vehicles is the winning team. My experience with Delta Force hasn't been close to Battlefield in this regard. Vehicles have minor impact on the result of the match, making it look like an infantry-only game mode, but in a very unnecessarily big map. Also, the vehicles don't really feel as smooth as a game like Battlefield 2042, and all in all, it seems to me as if the devs didn't really put enough time and effort to polish this part of the game for this alpha. Not to mention that we aren't really dealing with a polished game in other sections at all. For example, the weapons and gunplay. Weapons in Delta Force have a lot of issues that the majority of people, or at least the less experienced FPS gamers, might not even notice. And believe me or not, I've talked about this with my experienced buddies for hours, and none of them like the gunplay of this game, despite other content creators giving this game unlimited credit. There are issues that can't really be discussed. They are more obvious when you can actually feel them existing. But one thing that we can actually discuss is damage drop-off per distance, which is absolutely unnecessary and just too much. For example, the AKS-74, which is one of the most powerful weapons in the alpha, deals roughly 10 damage per upper body in like 40 meters. Combined with yet another unnecessarily overpowered aspect of this game, which is the visual recoil, you just need to mag dump on a moving dude with an assault rifle in under 50 meters, which is just crazy not only for a Battlefield player who's actually familiar with the concept of tap firing, but for any FPS gamer. Seriously, this game makes you unlock literally every single attachment on a weapon to be able to shoot properly. And not even tap firing can save you because the damage drop actually compensates for your good aim and it won't even make a visible difference. Not only that, but every single full auto weapon in this game has a horizontal recoil built in. Like every single one of them. This is not necessary. In fact, it's hurting the experience, not because people have skill issues, but because horizontal recoil is a type of recoil that you can't do anything about regardless of how good your aim is. Only a few attachments might be able to reduce it, like reduce the impact. So damage drop off for distance, visual recoil, and unwanted, overly strong horizontal recoil is holding this game's gunplay back. Simple as that. Fair to say that people were going nuts for having visual recoil in 2042, but that isn't even comparable to Delta Force's visual recoil. Something needs to be done in this regard, and I can say that confidently because even tap firing isn't going to help you in this game. But in my opinion, the devs' #1 priority should be the damage drop-off for distance. It's just way unbalanced and unnecessarily overpowered. That's the best I can describe it, and it really needs to be fixed, at least for the open beta or for the final release. Operators in this game are just on a whole new level as well. I'm not someone who likes to brag, guys. You know that if you've been around for a while. But just to be clear, I have plus 2,000 hours on Rainbow Six Siege, and Battlefield wasn't the only game I played back in the day. Even in Rainbow Six Siege, which is literally designed and built around specific operators with specific abilities, the player doesn't need to do all that to use the maximum potential of an operator, and I can confidently say that even Rainbow Six Siege isn't as operator biased as Delta Force is. Everything in Delta Force revolves around operators. Imagine having to play a specific operator to be able to use smoke grenades, or another operator for being able to have a frag grenade. That's literally the most absurd thing I've seen in a shooting game in, I don't know, in the past 10 years. It's crazy, but it doesn't even end there. Some operators have access to some assault rifles, but don't have access to some other assault rifles, which is just a whole new topic this time. And that's the case for some SMGs as well. Say you have Uzi for one operator, but not the SMG-45 or the MP5. Why? I mean, seriously, why? Battlefield does that by categorizing weapons for different classes. For example, support class can't have access to LMGs. That's just an example. But the way Delta Force is doing this, it makes absolutely zero sense. If you want an operator to have access to SMGs, that operator should have access to every single SMG. You can't just give it 5 SMGs and just leave the rest behind for another operators. And that really doesn't make any sense. And as I said, this isn't really a copy of Battlefield. It's just something that apparently came to mind of some developers and they actually made it happen. And that's not cool. And apparently Battlefield 2042 isn't the only game with AI bots and lobbies. And Delta Force devs even copied that from 2042. And thanks to that, Delta Force 2 has AI bots, but this time, instead of putting an AI text next to their name, like 2042, we don't even know who's a real player and who's an AI, because AI names are random. If there's a lack of players in the closed alpha, then give access to some more people on Steam and let them play, right? Even if you wanted to put some AIs here and there, honesty would have been much appreciated in this regard, and people didn't have to find this out all by themselves. I mean, maybe devs thought we don't even know this, but come on, man, you can do better than this. We do have AI bots in 2042 every day. We know one when we see one, you know? It's actually obvious. Some people just look at you waiting for you to kill them. And this is not something that I say. This is probably something that most of the players in the game have noticed. Even if you want to put AIs there, at least somehow make it obvious for people so we can at least know how many AIs are we dealing with and how many are there in the server. That's all we wanted. But now let's talk about some minor issues that can really help a polished experience to fix. Let's start with the minimap. The minimap in Delta Force is static and the player icon in the minimap is actually dynamic and moving. This is exactly the opposite of Battlefield games, and it doesn't really make sense. As you can see here, in 2042, the minimap layout completely moves and the player icon is almost static, making it pretty easier for the player to navigate and use the minimap properly. That's not the case in Delta Force, and the minimap really causes more confusion. This is again unnecessary and needs to be fixed. The layout of the map should be moving, while the player icon in the minimap should actually be static, so you can actually find targets and find objectives and everything that's going on in the minimap easier. It has nothing to do with Battlefield, it's just common sense. Sometimes jumping on obstacles won't activate the climbing animation, and you need to do that a couple of more times until the soldier actually grabs the ledge and climbs on top of that obstacle. This cost my life more than 4 times in 4 hours. It's a quality of life issue and really hurts the experience. It really needs to be fixed. And one more thing, icons are too small in this game. From objective icons to reviving icons and even texts in the game, they are most of the times hard to see with all the chaos going on around the player, and making them bigger or at least having an option to mess with the size is a perfect idea. With all that said, we're in the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed and hope it was helpful. If you think I've missed something, the comment section is the place for you, so go down there and let me know everything you have to say about Delta Force or this video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay cool.